Hello, my name is Goda Rybita and you're listening to Sentient, a new series of podcasts by Enterprise Lithuania, where we will discuss how life sciences improve our living. Indeed, the pursuit of any scientific endeavor is noble, but life sciences are particularly special. They pervade so many aspects of our lives, from healthcare to debates about stem cell research and genetic testing. While dramatic scientific progress has been made in recent decades, so much remains unknown. Yet the knowledge we've gathered has opened up a new world, giving us unique ways of solving problems. Sentient will reveal the potential, development and innovative solutions of the Lithuanian life sciences sector. We will dive into 10 different topics about cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, ethics of gene editing, addictions, biotechnology, microbiome, COVID-19 research and even life in space. Today I'm interviewing two amazing neuroscientists and we'll speak about addiction. What happens in the brain when a person is addicted to something? Whether it's possible to cure addiction, what addiction studies are carried out in Lithuania, and what science versus business collaboration opportunities are possible. And I present to you Vilnius University Life Sciences Center Professor Valentina Vengelienė. Hello, Valentina.
Hi.
And the Vilnius University Life Sciences Center Professor Osvaldas Rukšėnas. Hello,
Hi.
Osvaldas.
Hi.
So let's start from the beginning. What happens in the brain when a person is addicted to something? Valentina, you may start.
This is actually a very difficult question, and I hope you have a lot of time.
Well, we have some time.
If not, I guess I can do it shortly. First of all, the chronic drug consumption changes the brain neurotransmission, is the way how the neurons work, permanently. When you go on withdrawal, some changes come back to normal brain functioning as it was before, but some changes stays. So the question is, what are these changes that stays? And nobody knows which of those changes are contributing the most to development of addiction. So then another question, how behavior is changed. If behavior is changed, it means the brain functioning is changed. And so there are many theories. Some of them survive, some of them die. And at the moment, there are 8 surviving theories. What changes in the brain? What are the changes, behavioral changes, that makes you addicted? So scientists argue about it. And preclinical scientists, clinical scientists have different theories. I have also my favorite theories. I have some of them that I absolutely don't like. So if I would go to these theories, what do they think changes in the brain, and how is this behavioral change connected to these changes in the brain? This would be the half of the day.
You said that you have your favorite theory and science.
Yes.
Could you please shortly explain the theory?
Okay, so first of all, 8 theories. I have my favorite ones are related to learning. So one of them is incentive sensitization, if you know what it means. It's the way of how people learn. It's associative learning. So when some science cues predict, some stimuli predict an event, for instance, in this case, some stimuli predict the availability of the drug. So this prediction becomes sensitized. And so you connect some stimuli with the availability of the drug and expectation of how you're going to feel if you take the drug. And that gets sensitized, and for one person this stimuli means absolutely nothing, but for another it starts meaning too much. So that's one of the theories. It's called incentive sensitization theory. There is one more. It's habit formation. It's some sort of malformation of the habit. When there is, let's say, a stimulus that predicts something in your environment, which leads to your response and which leads to some sort of expected outcome. So the stimulus leads to a response as a habit. So this is what happens in an addicted person. Stimulus and response. It kind of is caused by overly optimistic expectation of the outcome. Even though addicted person knows it's not going to be that good, somehow he comes into some sort of habit-like behavior. There is a stimulus and there is a response. If I don't know, I can give an example. Let's say you see in the movie someone took a cigarette and that's it, and you take a cigarette.
Oh wow!
This is some sort of, it's sort of abnormal habit-like formation. That's one more theory that I also really like. There is more of them, but the learning-related theories are really my favorite. And everything that is your behavior and behavioral change is caused by the changes in the brain, of course. There is always this neurotransmission changes, some network regroupings, or disappearance of some... Another thing about addiction is that some of the drugs, more than others, damage the neurons. So, for instance, alcohol, because of alcohol and especially because of withdrawal, the neurons die. So this, of course, also affects the behavior, and especially these neurons are cortical neurons. Cortical neurons are responsible for goal-directed behaviors and decision-making and reward and punishment evaluation. So if these neurons are damaged, if they are no longer there, then accordingly the behavior is also not really as it should be. So that's one more thing. There is one more thing.
Wow.
It impairs plasticity because the brain is meant to adapt to ever-changing environment. So using of the drugs continuously impairs the brain plasticity. The brain is incapable of adapting to ever-changing environment, which also impairs the behavior. That's, as you can see,
it is kind of complicated,
very
isn't
complicated. Yeah, there's a reason why this topic is not really resolved up to now, even though the whole world is working on it. So.
Osvaldas, are all brains equal in regards to addiction? I mean, is there such a thing as a brain that is more prone to addiction? For example, if so, what kind of brain is it and how is it different?
Well, definitely there are differences, and let's start from beginning that although we are human beings, or if you take dogs, whatever, looks like similar. We have two legs, two hands, etc. But still, we are very different, and especially when it comes up to brain. So this is a source of variability, and the differences naturally they occur as we have different temperament, etc. So this way we get addicted in different level, so to say. In this respect, I would distinguish by age. Teenagers, for example, young people are more prone to get addicted, and reason is because their brain is still in formatting process.
How long does it last, the formatting
Well,
phase?
it's extending. It used to be 16, 18 years. Now it's over 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, latest data talks about 21, 23, even years. This is age when the brain more or less is mature. So naturally, when some processes are going on in the brain, so this external addition of drugs or whatever, it disturbs, and it has generally long-lasting consequences.
Maybe Valentina, you'd like to elaborate a little bit on how does drug and alcohol abuse affect the brains of young people?
One thing, of course, the alcohol, of course, this is a neural death. This is one of the, whether you're young or not. It's just that if you are young, your damage will be more significant because the brain is still evolving. The frontal cortex is still evolving. So then the impact will be much bigger. But the other thing, when you are still adolescent, you are developing the coping strategies. So that's unrelated to what drug physically does to the brain. You are developing mature coping strategies as you grow up. If you choose, whenever there is a stress exposure or complicated situation exposure, if you choose to go and take the drug, it means your mature coping skills with the life problems are not evolving. And this is one of the vicious cycle where you started using them too early. You're going to get trapped in it because you don't know how to handle your life problems in a mature way, adult way. So that's one thing besides how the drug affects the brain. So, but of course, when the frontal cortex is still developing, of course, to affect that development process is really harmful. So the adolescents, that's definitely no go. They shouldn't be using drugs.
Yeah, or maybe we should never ever start using alcohol at all.
That's ideal.
That's ideal.
So, talking about the ideal world, why do you think alcohol and drugs are so integrated into our society? Maybe Osvaldas, you would like to start. I know this is not a really neuroscientific question,
but it's in a way related, and I will start from beginning of our discussion about mechanism of addiction.
Yeah.
So what I want to add to what Valentina told, it's about pleasure, because everything starts with pleasure. You drink alcohol, you smoke cigarette. Okay, it's curiosity, especially in adolescent or even younger age, but later on it's pleasure, because it gives you pleasure, and everyone is willing to have pleasure. And this is very strong. These so-called brain has so-called pleasure centers, and they are very strong, meaning that they are ruling rest of behavior. And experiments have been done with rats. We've implanted electrodes into these centers that rat can stimulate herself, and it's stimulated to death, literally. It even didn't drink water, which is main product which has to be drunk. It ignored water.
So basically, when humans abuse alcohol or drugs, they can stimulate themselves to death as well.
Well, not literally.
Yeah.
Well, we have cases when people die from that, but it's a bit different, because with addiction there is another moment, in addition to pleasure, and especially with alcohol, that it has two phases. It's exciting and depressive phase. So initially you get excited, good mood, and lately you get opposite feelings. That's one point. Another point, when we talk about addiction in time, there is a simple rule that initial part, which might be pretty short in some cases, it's related with pleasure. Person or animal does this for pleasure, but the rest of your life is your work for keeping not being in bad mood. So you have to work kind of to protect yourself from being in bad shape or in bad mood. So that's I think very important to keep in mind, that this proportion is very unequal, and this moment of pleasure is pretty short in lifetime.
Yeah, and the consequences are terrible.
Well, mostly yes. It depends on drug or behavior you addicted, but mostly it's not good stuff. Definitely.
Valentina, would you like to add anything?
Well, that was one of the addiction theories.
Yeah.
It's only one of the theories.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there are 8 of
And
them.
that's one of my least favorite, by the way.
What is your favorite then?
This was, I already told you about this learning-related theories. So, yeah, this is one of the theories that you first you seek the enjoyment from the drug, and then you use the drug because you want to avoid this withdrawal or conditioned withdrawal symptoms. So it's a positive reinforcement first and negative reinforcement second. So that's, I don't know, it's for me, it sounded a little bit too simple for me to like it. So yeah, but it's one of the theories, so they might be still true. So, but to your question, why it is so widespread in the society, I guess, I don't know, it's a complexity of our brains that somehow maybe people just need to relax somehow, and eventually they run out of ideas. And then especially alcohol, it became so integrated into our social behavior that, for instance, if you do preclinical study with rats, if rats are socially housed, they drink less. If humans are in a group, they drink more. So this became part of our social behavior. So if you take other animals like rats, it isn't like that. It's just kind of too integrated in our society, and that's it. And I guess need for, as Osvaldas says, need for joy, and eventually it became such a tradition that we just can't get rid of it anymore.
I would add availability of alcohol.
That's one more thing.
Yeah, it's easy to do. I mean, historically, from ancient times, people have been doing this. So it's relatively cheap, easy done, good effect. So
but terrible consequences again.
Well, that's most terrible.
The countries that have no access to alcohol, they have no addiction to alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there are countries that have no access to alcohol, so then there is no problem. So there is, of course, one easy solution, but that's not going to.
We can compensate with other drugs.
I believe they do.
Yeah.
What would you say are the common misconceptions of an addiction? Maybe Osvaldas, you would like to start.
First one, I would say that it's not for me, meaning that I won't be addicted. I just try, and that's about other people. Where
I'm an exception.
Yeah, I am exception. I'm strong, and that's okay. I just try, and I enjoy it. And statistics shows that it's not that simple, and that quite many cases it's enough just one trial, and you can get addicted. So that's one point. And what else? Another misconception may be that if it happens, it's just me, it's just my problem, which is wrong again. And especially if you take the same alcohol, which we just discussed, it's calculated that it's most dangerous drug. If you calculate everything, all consequences, not only a particular person, his or her diseases, medical treatment, etc., but loss of work, social impact, some accidents made by a drunk state, etc., etc. So if you count everything, it's number one financially. So this should be kept in mind, that if you drink, it's not only you. There is society around you, larger or smaller, but this is society which might be affected by your behavior.
Valentina, would you like to add?
Maybe one more misconception, that it has anything to do with the willpower, don't you think?
Well, that's another story.
That people say there is no addiction, there is just a lack of willpower. If this would be true, then it would mean that 100% of people, whenever they're exposed to a drug, have to use willpower to resist it. But most people would be absolutely indifferent to the drug. It's only a very small percentage of people that tried any drug of abuse get addicted. So it's between 8 and 15% of people, depending on the drug, that they get addicted to a drug. So only these people need the willpower to resist it. And willpower is such a psychological term, but there is always something behind it, that actually that's how your brain works. Why one person needs willpower to resist it, but another is completely indifferent. So maybe this, when people say, oh, he just doesn't have enough of willpower to resist it, there is no such thing as addiction. So no, this is a disease. It's genetically inheritable. And whether you need willpower or not, that also depends on who you are.
Valentina, you have been researching, studying alcohol addiction for the past 20 years or so.
Yep.
What are the challenges you have or had to overcome in order to be able to conduct your research?
The challenges, there are many. To be honest, first of all, it's a complexity of the disease. I would say of all psychiatric disorders, this one is the most complex, the most difficult. So this comes immediately with the challenges. So another thing, not so much we can do in clinical studies. So for research, you need to do preclinical studies, which means you have to use animals. So animals are not addicted to anything. They don't have any of our psychiatric disorders. You have to sort of provoke these disorders, not just addiction. And so then it comes to a validity of animal models. It's called animal models, modeling of disease in animals. And then it comes validity, how much of this disease you modeled. So these are the challenges. To induce the disease in the animal and treat it and find a treatment that will be translatable, which means it would work in animal and also it will work in people. These are the biggest challenges of the field.
And one of your main breakthroughs, I would call that, was about a new possible potential addiction medicine that was based on calcium.
Yes.
Could you please elaborate on your discovery?
Yeah, that was a coincidental discovery, as best of them are. So we were testing acamprosate. Acamprosate is a drug that helps to some people to keep abstinent, to stay abstinent.
From alcohol.
Yeah, from alcohol. But permeability, brain permeability is very low. So there is a blood-brain barrier that blocks compounds like drugs to enter the brain. And so permeability of this drug is very low. And we tried, in collaboration with some pharmaceutical company, we tried the other combination. So that did not contain calcium, but instead it contains sodium, whether it will improve the permeability. So, and then as we did it in rats, voluntary alcohol drinking rats, that new drug with the sodium acamprosate had no effect. Then, of course, the idea came, okay, let's just test the calcium. Then calcium salt, we took a couple of different calcium salts, and it had exactly the same effect as calcium acamprosate. That was the discovery. And since this is not, there is no profit from this, calcium salt. It's a supplement, calcium supplement that you can use. Then, of course, the pharmaceutical companies did not pick it up. There's nothing to pick up because there will be no profit from that.
Yeah, maybe, hopefully, one day. Fingers
Hopefully
crossed.
one day it'll.
Yeah. And another kind of a philosophical question for both of you. Do you think it is possible to cure addiction at all? Maybe Osvaldas, you would like to start.
Well, I should be optimistic, and I should say yes, because if we say now no, well,
we block.
We block, and future would be very dark. So we should be optimistic, and we should believe. And understanding of brain functioning, although it's going slowly, but it's still increasing. So maybe it's not so close in future, but it should come. It should come. That's my belief.
Fingers crossed, Valentina.
I would say at the moment what we're trying to do is managing the disease, because curing is probably a next step, because as it is also genetically, the predisposition to get addicted is genetically determined. So which means that some of us respond to a drug differently than others. So then, then we have to fix that predisposition. This is complicated. But managing the diseases, as there are plenty of good examples. Let's say depression there's plenty of medications that help people to manage this. So I hope that managing to remain abstinent. It is not really curing, but it's managing.
Yeah.
You remain abstinent and get your life back in order, and it's fine. So that's possible.
Yeah, that would help a lot.
Yes.
The society. And another philosophical, maybe, question. What is your opinion? What is the most striking thing to you both personally regarding addiction studies? Osvaldas, let's start from you again.
Well, from a methodological point of view, it's a quite common argument or obstacle, so to say. It's variability. Because, as it was mentioned today, most experiments are performed using animals. It doesn't matter, rats or mice, but animals. And the problem is that if you try to repeat the experiment a few times, which you need to do in order to get statistics, you never get the same results. And that's annoying, frankly. So you have to handle this, increasing number of repetitions, number of animals used, etc. That's one point. Another point, I would say, which is touched already, is translation to human beings. Although we believe that we have much in common, but still our behaviors are different. And especially about treatment technologies, they turn out to be quite different. So I would say these two things. And anyway, technically we have to work with animals now because that's stage. But at some point we have to translate it to human beings. So these are challenges, I would say.
One more thing maybe I could mention is that lately, especially psychiatry research focusing on it, is inter-individual differences. There is inter-individual differences. People are different because of their genetic background and environmental impacts that they go through life. So they are naturally different from each other. But there is intra-individual differences, which means on one day you will feel differently than you feel on another day. Depending on, let's say, last night I slept really bad, I will respond to everything in my environment completely differently from compared to what I would yesterday when I slept really good. So this is called intra-individual differences. And as people have these now mobile devices, the clinicians started studies which are called momentary assessment, ecological momentary assessment, EMA. So that the people carry these devices and they report on a daily basis what happened to them, how they feel, do they crave, are they stressed, did they get exposure to some cues that predict drug availability. They report everything. And depending on how they feel today, you can correlate, do they feel like drinking today or like using drugs today? And so in this way, you can adjust the medication not only to a person because of his individual inter-individual differences, not only to a person but to a day, depending to connect the medication or treatment strategy to what happened in your day. So this is going to be a next challenge and maybe a very big hope.
Mm-hmm. What kind of addiction research, Valentina, is being carried out in Lithuania?
Preclinical research, not that I know, except us. Clinical research they do in Kaunas. There is
Life Sciences Health Sciences University.
Mm-hmm. Not so much, but they do some genetical correlation with the susceptibility of getting addicted. They do some of the research, not so much. So,
but just to add, we are working with human beings.
Oh, yeah. That's nice to know.
Yeah.
Our advantage. And talking about advantages, what would you say are Lithuania's advantages in the addiction research field? Osvaldas, you may start.
Well, in this case, I'm quite optimistic, and I would say a few factors. One is infrastructure. And now we're really well equipped. Well, there is never end for equipment, but I would say now we are reasonably good equipped. That's one point. Another very important moment is people. People who use these devices, equipment, etc. So we have very bright young people, not only young, but as usually we are looking and talking about young people. So people are coming to programs which are dealing with technologies, with brain, etc. And they are very curious and they grow up. And this is a new generation which hopefully will come up to continue this research. So combining both these factors, I think it's really good.
Mm-hmm. Valentina?
Advantage, Lithuanian advantage. You know, there is always advantage when you're a big, rich country. You have lots of money for science. Yeah. For science, then it's an advantage. Lithuania doesn't have much of money for science.
But maybe we have creative people.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe what Osvaldas says. We have a lot of interactions with students. It does look like these are really curious young people that really would like to. They wouldn't want to go to abroad, and would really like to contribute and really get curious about it. Maybe this craving for knowledge and contribution, maybe this would be an advantage because this field has not been touched much in Lithuania, the addiction field. Maybe that would be an advantage, that there would be enough of people to choose from that want to do that research.
Mm-hmm. And my last question, what are the possibilities of science versus business collaborations in the field? What would you say, Osvaldas?
Again, I would say very good. Yeah, well, coming back to prerequisites for research, but we have basis for this. And we have developing and established the biotech companies which are already set up in Lithuania and which are coming. So it's just a moment of will or wish to cooperate, and especially cooperation with respect to development of new drugs or curing the technologies. And we already have a few, I would say, quite successful examples when joint projects are developed and they are performed. So in this case, I'm very optimistic.
I absolutely agree. Industry-academia collaboration is a match made in heaven. Wow. I did the best discoveries in collaboration with industry. There's a reason for this, because the cost trends of industry and academia are completely different. So cost trends of academia is a basic research. Companies don't have time for this because they're self-funded, they need profit. They don't have time to do basic research. So they use the knowledge from academia of the basic research, understanding of the disease. The cost trends of industry is a target, finding the targets and target everything that is related to how exactly to treat the disease, what is needed to be targeted. So this is all the strengths of industry, and only when we come together, then we can actually discover the successful drug. And especially lately, academia really rely on the money that comes from industry, so they're really willing to collaborate too. So I completely agree. This is the best collaboration that there is.
Mm-hmm. And on that bright note, I would say probably to summarize our conversation, that addiction is a really complicated matter, but creative people coming together, industry and academia coming together is pushing the matters further step by step, and hopefully one day we will be able to understand the addiction better and to help people who are in trouble. Thank you, Osvaldas, and thank you, Valentina, for coming to this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
The podcast is brought to you by Life Sciences Baltic, the largest international life sciences forum in the Baltic countries, organized by Enterprise Lithuania, funded by the European Union structural funds. While presenting the potential of the Lithuanian life sciences sector, the forum provides different digital experiences for life sciences companies, startups and academia. Join us on September 20 to 24 and turn new connections into meaningful projects. We are not just the stuff that dreams are made on, we are the stuff that DNA is made on. Life science is simply the basis of our body and brain function, so it should be important to us if we want to better know ourselves. Tune in next time for more on Sentient by Enterprise Lithuania.